Welcome all of you to the first meeting of the calendar year 2018. Thank the members for coming. Thank the staff for being here, and welcome to our guests. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I want to thank everybody here at the table and staff and guests for your support in calendar 2017. We did a lot of work last year, covered a lot of ground. I'm very proud of that, and I think it's something that we can all be proud of. Feeling very good about it, and looking forward to working with you all in 2018. The agenda isn't very long today, so if we get serious about it, we'll probably get it done fairly quickly. So we will have at it now. First on the agenda, the minutes of the special meetings of November 15th, November 29th, and December 6th. Those were provided to you in your books. Members have had a chance to review them. Are there any corrections, suggestions, changes, comments of those three sets of minutes? Hearing nothing, may I have a motion, please, to approve all of them, each set of minutes? Thank you very much, Sandra. Paul, thank you for the second. All in favor? All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. None opposed. We're good. Now, to the minutes of the last regular meeting, December 13th. You've had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any questions about the minutes or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve those minutes? Paul, thank you very much. Is there a second? Jerry, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. There are none opposed. The motion carries unanimously. Second agenda item is the finance report. Chairman Lomsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met yesterday afternoon after approving the meeting minutes from the the special meetings that we I had a special lecture on something else. We approved those meeting minutes, then we advanced and discussed the one agenda item, which was a state sales tax revenue bond, state PIT revenue bond offering. And after some discussion, we unanimously agreed to recommend approval of that at today's board meeting. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions for Gerard? Hearing none, we'll move to the third agenda item, the single approval financing. Mr. President.
Good morning. Excuse us, but it's not possible. Some of us are having trouble getting into the Wi-Fi.
Did you change your password?
Mm-hmm.
We've got the new one.
We're using this one.
This one does not seem to be.
I got on.
It worked for me. Work either. One place reached 5 question mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I got on. But you had to
There's three of us.
It took me 2 tries.
through it.
Why don't we give you all a few minutes to get on to it?
Well, you went in. Well, I got it on the computer.
We're going to proceed with the single approval financing, and President will give the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. Behind tab 3 is the personal income tax revenue bond, sales tax revenue bonds, credit summary, and staff report with co-bond counsel Ken Wong, Esquire of Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, and Robert James, Esquire of Golden Holly James, presenting along with Andy Purcell.
We seem to have changed positions at the table.
Yes, we were instructed this is the only camera that's working, this one is not. So
I see.
we figured we'd mix it up for the end of the year.
Thanks, Andy.
Technology issue.
Thank you, Andy. Ken, Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning and Happy New Year. The board is being asked to authorize a new money transaction using 2 alternative structures, one under the sales tax revenue bond program and the other under the personal income tax revenue bond program. The mechanics of the 2 programs are very similar. The major difference is the stream of revenues that secure the bonds, sales tax revenue versus personal income tax revenue. The board is being asked to authorize the issuance of multiple series of tax-exempt and taxable fixed and/or variable rate bonds issued at one or more times with a term of 30 years to be sold on either a competitive or negotiated basis or a combination of both. Proposed bonds can be issued under either program or in a combination of both programs with a combined issuance not to exceed $1.7 billion. The bonds are being issued for new money purposes and are expected to fund a variety of capital projects under various programs, including the State University of New York educational facilities, transportation facility projects for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, economic development grants, transportation initiatives to reimburse the state or fund various environmental projects which may be administered by the Department of Environmental Conservation, the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, the Department of State, or the Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation. Included in the financing are various healthcare grants, which can include essential healthcare program grants and CRFP grants. If the bonds are issued under the sales tax revenue bond program, the bonds will be paid by semi-annual payments made pursuant to a financing agreement between DASNY and the state. The bonds are secured by the set-aside of 1 cent, or approximately 25% of the state's 4% sales tax, to be collected pursuant to the statute and deposited in the sales tax revenue bond fund. Current debt service coverage on all sales tax debt across all issuers is 4.9 times. If the bonds are issued under the personal income tax revenue bond program, the bonds will be paid by semi-annual payments made pursuant to the financing agreement between the authority and the state. These bonds will be secured by the set-aside of 25% of the personal income tax revenues collected pursuant to statute and deposited in the revenue bond tax fund. Current debt service coverage on all outstanding PIT debt across all issuers is 3.3 times. Both programs are identically rated and are expected to be rated AA1, AAA, AA+. Mr. Chairman.
Andy, thank you. Cam?
And Mr. Chairman, one other thing I'd like to mention is that the governor noted in the State of the State, the executive is exploring possible state tax law changes in light of the federal tax bill that was passed at the end of last year. If anything comes out in the budget that affects personal income tax, it's expected that we will be issuing bonds under the sales tax program.
All right. Thank you.
Can I ask, so that decision would be made as things develop, and it would be made by staff and the budget office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when we approve this, or if we approve this today, it's subject to that qualification.
That's correct.
Other questions from Portia?
What is the current capacity under the sales tax?
How much headroom is there?
Well, the coverage,
Is 4.9
as Andy had noted,
times,
right.
and the requirement has to be 2 times coverage, so there's quite a bit of capacity.
More under sales tax relative to the sales tax receipts than there is under PIT.
Right, but
But
PIT is
there's
the
actually
bigger
more room
program.
under PIT because
Right.
it's a bigger revenue source.
That's correct. That's correct.
So I'm still not clear under sales tax if there is a large dollar capacity percentage.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'd have to look at the state's revenue tax collections to really answer that question, but I think at one time, the 25% is like 13 billion, I think, of the sales tax, and it might be even higher than that. I don't really recall. But you're right, the personal income tax program, that is a much bigger revenue stream.
So if we were to start moving only to sales tax, there is room, but there's not infinite room.
That's correct.
But didn't the controller come out with a report last half of last year, that indicated the state sales tax collections were below projection?
Yes.
I think
Especially
that's
upstate.
correct. I think that's correct, John.
But the other question that I raised is that, is a calculation been made that you can share with us that shows how the Tax Reform Act in Washington impacts state tax revenues, income tax revenues, because those people, the majority of whom are middle class and upper middle class New Yorkers who will benefit from the doubling of the standard deduction. That reduces their adjusted gross income, which reduces the amount of state income tax that's automatically paid. So for many, a majority of New Yorkers, the Tax Reform Act in Washington is a positive benefit on how much income tax they're going to pay in the state of New York. How much, do we know what that projection is that's going to cost the state in lost income tax revenue because of the higher adjusted gross?
John,
Reduction of adjusted
we don't
gross
have that, we don't have that information here. I'm not sure if budget has it, but that's why in general, I think the issue that you're raising is the potential implications for the PID credit, which is why if there is a proposal that comes out in the budget that which would affect the personal income tax, we would then be issuing under the sales tax program for I think exactly the reasons that you're identifying.
I don't see why we can't be doing this in two separate tranches. One, the sales tax thing where there's been no threat to any change in the way we collect sales taxes in the state. The income tax is in question. And when the governor tells New Yorkers that he's going to get rid of the income tax and put in a payroll tax, it doesn't seem particularly prudent for an authority like this to be selling bonds, say that it's okay to sell bonds against income tax collections.
But Portia just said that if indeed that is the case, and we don't know yet whether that's going to be the case, then these bonds will be issued under the sales tax availability. I understand what you're saying.
I can understand it. It is a complex issue, but these are very complex issues, and the ultimate authority and ultimate responsibility falls upon us. And we're now presented with information that makes you curious as to whether it's a prudent thing to do. Prudence is one of the things that should drive us as members.
Well,
The resolutions put both tools on the table for that flexibility, to have that flexibility.
Why
And the
don't we have
budget-
two resolutions then?
so the budget-
One we can approve and one that we don't have to deal with.
So the budget will be released next week. There's a process of either 21-day amendments or 30-day amendments where we'll watch and see what comes out in the budget. We can certainly report back at the February board meeting in terms of anything that comes out in the budget that would have an effect on the personal income tax.
I understand that, but the proposed tax changes in New York are so complex, you know full well that it won't be done in this budget. But when this appears to be a state initiative, why are we proceeding to do something that's contrary to what is a state objective? Maybe the state objective will not come to pass.
I was just going to say, what we have for sure is the governor's suggestion that that initiative is something that he's going to pursue. We don't know what the result's going to be, and if the status quo remains the same, which is redundant, it's fairly clear that the income tax revenue stream will not be affected. We just don't know yet what the answer is going to be. Once we know, Portia's made the point that if there is an impact, we go directly to the sales tax revenue stream. We don't use the income tax, the personal income tax revenue stream. And if it then becomes necessary going forward because of changes in the state taxation decision law, to either condition or diminish our dependence on and formally do that in some resolution, we can certainly take that step then. We just don't know enough now to take the step. And it may be that it's unnecessary.
To John's second point,
Yes.
which was not something that is a proposal, it's a knowable fact, that is that the state will receive less income tax revenue as a result of the federal tax bill.
Yes.
Because of the increase in the standard deduction. I assume that's something that we would need to disclose, that we would need to note with, and there aren't public estimates now, but.
I raised the question with Portia, who has suggested that it may be necessary to make that disclaimer. It may be necessary in the POS.
Well, if you were to issue under the PIT
Under
bonds.
PIT,
Right.
not sales tax. Andrew, you started to say something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, sort of offer for, some of the members and the questions here. Obviously, the executive budget is scheduled to be released next week. It includes an update to the state's financial plan, forecasts, plan to balance the budget, other details, as you know. And, we'll know more once all those details are finalized and out. I think it'll provide, some clarity on some of these questions, maybe not all of them. but, you know, the budget division will be happy to come back to the board, perhaps at the February meeting, to walk through some of those details in a focused way. But
That would be
These
helpful.
bonds wouldn't be issued before then. right?
Correct.
Before-
Correct.
March.
Correct.
So at least on the second point, I would assume the budget would answer that. I mean, you'll have revenue projections on what the PIT revenue will be.
Yeah, so we're going through a process now of updating the picture of the state's finances, the financial plan, and we'll have, you know, proposals, all those things will come out, the details will come out, you know, next week. And, you know, happy to come back to the board and walk through stuff.
If I may jump in, I mean, the rating agency will speak to that. These bonds will have to be rated, whether we go with sales tax or PIT. The rating agency will rate the bonds. And that would be, I think, you know, a determinant in whether the state issue, you know, PIT bonds or sales tax bonds on this first shot.
So the market will actually.
The market, I think, will tell. You know, I think, you know, and that's something that, you know, the bonds won't be sold without a rating.
But you don't come back to us if the rating changes. You don't come back to this board for a resolution if the rating changes.
That's correct. That's something we would.
Only if it drops below investment grade, and that's.
Right. But that,
But if something like that happened, we would certainly bring that
you
to
would
the
come
board's
back and
attention.
advise us and bring it to our
Yes,
attention,
absolutely.
but you could still,
That's correct.
Single approval is single
What is,
approval.
that's,
what is the, I assume that we have a continuing disclosure obligation when we issue these bonds. Is there any, if the tax legislation situation is in a process of flux, if it's evolving when the bonds are issued, what happens then? Are we then going to be updating the market on what the tax, you know, what the developments are in the legislature? I mean, obviously, especially if the bonds were backed by income tax, you know, I could see a situation where everything that, you know, that happens, every major piece of every step that's cleared on any significant tax reform would be, you know, a continuing disclosure event, and we would be in like a hamster wheel to, you know, kind of keep that up to date. I don't know. Thought about that.
And yeah, I think that, well, I'm conferring here. The disclosure issue, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, Dina and I were just saying there are a couple of things that happen, right? There's the quarterly update processes that the state goes through, right, in terms of the annual information statement in and of itself, which gives information. But as to your question on the specific continuing disclosure agreements, I'm thinking that there would obviously need to be discussion with bond counsel specifically.
Because the events are enumerated,
exactly.
the specific events that are reportable are enumerated, and I think these changes, I mean,
They're not one of the enumerated
right.
changes.
And in terms
There's
of
something significant between now and sale. You would have to sticker it, or am I way out of date with that term even?
Yeah, but that assumes that you're actually issuing a personal income tax program. You know, I think the overall thrust is that if there were a proposal that came out and there was discussion about some sort of tax law change that affects the personal income tax, that we wouldn't be issuing under the personal income tax program for exactly that reason. But so that's one disclosure that happens through the avenue of when you actually are issuing bonds through the marketing process. But John, you raised an interesting question. Yours is a different question with respect to the ongoing continuing disclosure obligations with respect to the bonds that have already been issued. And I think, you know, as sort of Dina and I have been conferring, it's not an enumerated event, but it is something that we would need to discuss in terms of sort of the proper way to make that information available.
because of course it wouldn't apply to only like if the upcoming bonds, but there are the bonds that have been issued for over a decade.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but and this is how I'm thinking of this action that we're being asked to take today, is that the issuance of these bonds, however they're done, has got a runway. And this is a step on the runway. It doesn't mean that we've defined how the bonds are going to be issued. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be paying very close attention to how things evolve. And my sense in what we're being asked to do is this is a step on the runway. I've been thinking about this at a more fundamental level. The commitment of the legislature to allocate the funds to pay these bonds is an ongoing annual event. If our government, and now we're talking about all branches of the legislature and the executive branch, are contemplating something that would threaten the repayment of these bonds, which I don't think they will do. That's something that could happen in any year. In other words, no one is going to do something that causes these things to default without knowing what they're doing. And they can do that, frankly, in any given year because we can't bind the legislature.
And that risk is disclosed in every OS that we have out now.
Exactly. So if somebody wants to, start thinking about, Dr. Strangelove events, that could happen at any time.
That's true. The difference is that there's a proposal.
Yes, that's
out
right.
there.
That's right.
This year. That's right. But there always is that appropriation action that must be taken. A substitution of sorts could happen in the appropriation.
Can a board revoke their resolution approval in the interim period of time? As John says, you're on a runway, and can you abort the takeoff before? I'm not asking for this particular. It just was a question that just.
I can't imagine the
Not
circumstances
that you
where that
would,
would
but
happen,
it's
but
possible,
yes,
right?
the board is
Right.
free to evaluate new information.
Right. And to take a decision based on that.
I think the comment about the market is very well taken. It's this. You can see a very different interest rate on these bonds than we're used to. If there is speculation about what's going on,
And the effect is not, I don't think, immediate, it could be, but the long-term effect of the loss of the state and local government tax deduction is more of a long-term thing. It's not going to.
Are there other questions before we hear Cam and Robert? Hearing none.
Well,
You have the floor.
it'd be much less interesting what has this gone on. And I just wanted to say this, we have done three, Hawkins, Delphine, and Wood has done three financings with Gordon Harley James.
Yes.
And if this is approved, this would be a fourth one
All right.
working together.
Thank you for letting us know that, for reminding us.
Thank you. So two supplemental resolutions are before you for consideration. One of them is under the Pitt General Purpose Bond Resolution. The second one is under the Sales Tax General Bond Resolution. Both resolution authorizes $1.7 billion in bonds. However, the sales tax resolution provides that if any bonds are issued under the Pitt supplemental resolution, that amount of bonds is deducted from the authorization under the sales tax bonds. And the comparable provision is in the Pitt supplemental resolution. So the net effect is that a total of only $1.7 billion can be issued under both resolutions. The two general bond resolutions are very similar. The main difference between the two general resolutions are in the source of payment for the bonds. With respect to the Pitt bonds are payable from a portion of the Pitt or the personal income tax collected by the state. On the other hand, the sales tax bonds are payable from a portion of the sales tax that are collected by the state. The two supplemental resolutions, as Ms. Robert would describe, or similar as far as the bond authorization and the amount of bonds that can be issued. Under each resolution, bonds may be issued for any authorized purpose, but it is expected, as Andy mentioned, that there would be issued for basically 4 purposes: educational, basically for the SUNY educational facilities; number 2, for transportation projects, for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. DASNY did 1 financing already last year for MTA, and this would be the second one for MTA. In addition, there will also be transportation projects for the New York Works Transportation Infrastructure Program. The third type of purpose would be grants, and there are 2 types of grants. One of them Andy mentioned, those are the CRFP and also the EHCP. Those are healthcare facility grants. The other type of grants are economic development grants that are administered by DASNY and also provided by other state funds. Finally, the last type of purpose would be environmental projects, and these are administered by DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Agriculture and Markets, the Department of State, and finally, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. The payment of debt service, the state finance law provides that 25% of the personal income tax are deposited into a revenue bond tax fund. That is a statutory fund. Payment of debt service on the PIT bonds are provided for through a financing agreement between DASNY and DOB. Those payments are subject to legislative appropriations. The same statutory framework applies to the sales tax bonds. 25% of the sales tax collected by the state are deposited in the sales tax revenue bond fund. And again, a financing agreement has been entered into between DASNY and DOB that provides for debt service on the sales tax bonds. Those payments are also subject to annual legislative appropriations. Robert, you want to speak about the
Sure. Thank you very much, Ken. So I'll describe to you just the mechanics of the supplemental resolutions. And as Andy and Ken mentioned, the mechanics of the programs, the sales tax and PIT programs, are very similar. And so that similarity extends through to the structure of each of the respective supplemental resolutions. So I'll just kind of go through the description once, and that'll cover both supplemental resolutions. So pursuant to each supplemental resolution, the sales tax bonds may be the bonds may be issued in one or more series or subseries at one or more times in an aggregate principal amount, as we've stated, not to exceed $1.7 billion. And as we've mentioned, there's some elasticity in each supplemental resolution, so that if the amount issued under sales tax is deducted from the amount issued under the PIT program, and vice versa. Although it is anticipated that the bonds will be issued as fixed rate bonds, all or a portion of the bonds may be issued as variable rate bonds, convertible bonds, capital appreciation bonds, and deferred income bonds. The resolutions further provide that all or a portion of the bonds authorized thereby may be sold at a public or private sale on a negotiated basis or through competitive bidding, and may be consolidated into a single series with any other bonds that are authorized under the respective resolution. The supplemental resolutions delegate to various officers of the authority various powers to determine and designate the series and subseries and to make certain determinations. The principal amount of the bonds to be issued under that resolution, provided that that aggregate amount, again, does not exceed $1.7 billion. The principal amount to be issued as tax exempt or as taxable bonds. The date or dates of maturity of the bonds, provided that none of the bonds will mature more than 30 days after the date of issue. Whether the bonds will bear interest at fixed or variable rates, and the rate or rates at which those bonds will bear interest, provided that the true interest cost will not exceed 7.5% if issued as tax exempt, or 10% if issued as taxable. The purchase price to be paid by the underwriters if the bonds are sold at a negotiated basis or on a negotiated basis, provided that purchase price is not less than 90% of the principal amount of the bonds issued. The manner in which the winning bid or bids will be selected if those bonds are sold on a competitive basis. The staff will also have the ability to determine redemption provisions applicable to the sales tax, to the bonds, including the redemption dates or prices, and the redemption price that may be equal, and the redemption price may be equal to a percentage of the principal amount of the bonds to be redeemed plus the accrued interest on that date, or it may be determined by a formula which is intended to make whole the holders of those bonds. The provisions related to any credit facilities entered into with respect to the bonds, whether any of the bonds will be book entry bonds and the depository for those bonds. And the supplemental resolutions further authorize various officers the authority to prepare and distribute the preliminary official statements, prepare, execute, and deliver one or more final official statements, execute and deliver one or more bond purchase agreements if those bonds are sold on a negotiated basis, or circulate one or more notices of sale if the bonds are sold on a competitive basis, to execute agreements to provide continuing secondary market disclosure so that underwriters can comply with Rules 15C212, to execute and deliver agreements providing for credit enhancement and liquidity if required, and also to execute all other documents and do all things necessary, convenient, or desirable in connection with the sale of agreements of the 2018-1.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Cam. Are there questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Adrian, thank you. Is there a second? John Gardner, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you, John. The motion carries. Thank you all very much for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can we just note for the record that in February we will get an update report from DASNY staff and also accept Adrian's offer to have
I think you just did.
So that was a yes.
So noted,
we can.
yes. Yes.
And if there's any
So noted.
updates from the bonding agencies, we will advise them.
I'm sorry, Jerry, say
The
again.
rating agencies. If there
If there are any
or
updates from the
changes.
rating agencies, yes, of course, I would assume, of course, you would include that.
Absolutely.
Sure, okay. And Adrian, do you think that the budget being released next week, do you think that your folk can be prepared to come in here and talk about it? There's a lot of specificity the rest of the year, and I'm wondering just whether your folk will be able to support you by coming in here.
Absolutely, yes, I will. I will bring reinforcements.
Okay. Thank you very much. We move on to the next agenda item, which is the report of the president.
Thank you again and good morning. We are beginning 2018 on a high note. DASNY entered the year as one of the top issuers in the nation according to the bond buyer and Reuters. We did $7.7 billion and we had 26 issuances. Our expectation will be to continue at a very high level and to continue to be competitive and make DASNY very attractive. As we've shared with you, we have embarked on a very aggressive agenda internally, looking at all of our processes, procedures, and policies, and finding ways that we could get our clients into the market with the same level and degree of stability and diligence. As you know, we did that at the end of 2017, and so many of our clients see that as a new benchmark. And so that is a call to action on all of our parts. And so we did exceptional work, and certainly you engendered a tremendous amount of support and leadership in giving us a direction. So kudos to everyone on that.
Thank you.
We achieved many notable highlights in 2017. A couple of examples of transactions: $1.8 billion PIT financing, $1.7 billion PIT financing, a $1.4 billion sales tax financing. We did $344 million SUNY dorms financing, more than $1 billion in low-cost tax-exempt bonds were issued to support the capital needs of and refinancings for private, not-for-profit higher education institutions in New York State, helping them to attract the best and the brightest students. More than $580 million in low-cost tax-exempt bonds were issued to support the capital needs of and refinancings for private, not-for-profit healthcare providers in the state, helping them provide New Yorkers with the highest quality healthcare. Through this work, DASNY and its clients are creating a very important economic foundation that positions New York State for success in 2018 and beyond. Recognizing we've got some challenges, but again, coming from the world that I have lived in for many years, there's always a macro environment, but at the end of the day, you've got to focus on your credit. And so that's how we're approaching this. I will now turn things over to Portia, who will give us a market update.
Thank you, Gerard. Behind tab 6 are the standard public finance reports. After the rush to market at the end of last year, the calendar has been very light thus far this year. Last week's calendar with the holiday was approximately $760 million. This week's calendar is somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. The December FOMC meeting minutes indicated that there was support for 3 gradual rate hikes through 2018. So we'll continue to monitor that as time goes on. We priced and closed in December the transaction for MSK, Fordham, St. John's, Truro, UCP Juanio, and Bronx, Lebanon. We're still working on St. Joseph's. The 1-year and 10-year MMD rates have increased 21 basis points and 4 basis points since the December meeting, while the 30-year MMD has stayed the same since the December board meeting. There's also included behind tab 6 the standard quarterly financial advisor update, and that concludes my report, Gerard.
Thank you.
How much did we do just in refundings?
I don't know the answer to that question, Sandra. I'll get it for you.
And the follow-up question that you could tell sometime is, how much more is out there with our clients? I know we talked to a lot of clients and did a lot of business, so how much more is there potential refundings?
Yeah, you know, I guess one thing I would just say observationally, you know, so obviously we are still working with healthcare clients that we had brought to the board for the resolution to proceed. That was Hospital for Special Surgery, Montefiore, and the Maimonides, all of whom had included certain refunding components to their transactions. You know, overall, I have to say, and we've talked about this before at various points in time, and you can certainly see it in my new inquiry report, is that there's very little lead time from when it is that we hear from clients and when it is that they're looking to actually get into the market. But certainly we can get back to you as to the answer as to how much we did in refundings last year, and try to answer sort of the what's out there question, although it's sort of, you know, sort of hard to answer that question because, again, there seems to be very, very little lead time that we're getting.
I just wondered if at least near term we hadn't cleared out most of the likely suspects.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Yeah, which obviously sort of analytically makes sense.
Yes, refresh my memory. Too many snippets of things I don't understand. In the new federal tax law, is refundings, were they prohibited or allowed?
So they eliminated the ability to do advance refundings. So the only refundings that would be happening now are current refundings. So within 90 days of calling.
So
there should be fewer.
Yeah.
Correct.
So only within 90 days of the call date.
Correct.
Thank you, Portia. Other questions for Portia?
Mr. Cornell, is the record going to proceed?
That certainly was sort of the broad scope of the needs on the part of Cornell. I think that will happen gradually over time.
Other questions for Portia? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of a particular corporation's proposed pending or current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular officials. Thank you very much, Paul. Is there a second? Second. Gerard, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. 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 We are in executive. The record will indicate that the members have just come out of an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the public session. The next item on the agenda is the president, who will have some information about the state of the state.
Thank you. I'm going to first start where, again, we continue to focus on change management, change initiative. One of the very important initiatives that we are delighted to highlight is near completion, and we will unveil in 2 weeks, is the work completed by our web team. We started that process approximately 10 months ago. I had charged Freeman Clocoat, who's no longer with us at this point in time, to begin or commence a change process around that. And that has been an incredible opportunity to bring marketing, IS, as well as a number of other segments across all of DASNY together to really talk about the type of information, the value that we attach to our image, as well as how our clients and vendors access information from us and do business with us. So I'm pleased to say that we have successfully put that in place. The team that has led that, Kim has been involved, Ann Andrews, Bill Golden is taking a very sizable role in moving this forward. Marilyn Fountain has had a significant role since Freeman has left in carrying that. John Quinlan, David Peritano, Jamie Hewitt, Carla Berta, and of course we'll certainly thank Freeman for starting that process. But again, this is an example of what we're doing across all of DASNY in terms of really attempting to eliminate and really break up the silos that existed and have more integration, more collaboration. This was an exceptional effort, and I think you'll be delighted by seeing this. I know you'll be delighted. You can quote me on that. And important insofar as getting all of these teams to work together to a common end. And we're seeing that across all of DASNY in terms of our construction division, finance and public finance, and legal division. So that's really the first step for the year. We'll come back to you on some of the other initiatives with respect to the work that we're doing around our financing guidelines as well as our small projects. We'll come to you in March with the successes that we're seeing in our construction processes, and we'll come to you in April with the changes that we are making in terms of our financing guidelines and our processes and procedures. So again, very exciting. It's all about planting flags. This is the first flag for 2018, and I congratulate the team across all of DASNY. With that, Governor's State of the State address, as you know, he touched on many themes that mirror the core of DASNY's business model. First, as we have highlighted earlier, vowing to fight the federal tax assault on New York. So the fight to save the tax exemption on private activity bonds was successful, but advanced refundings did not survive. We will continue to do our part to provide cost-effective construction and low-cost financing to our clients. As we indicated earlier, there'll be implications to our business, but we continue to have a core business as a conduit issuer, and that is very important. That was the risk that we were certainly confronting. Second piece is the governor is advancing a women's agenda by requiring MWBE goals on state funds used for contracting purposes on the local level. This will leverage the largest pool of state funding in history to combat systemic discrimination and create new opportunities for MWBE participation. As you know, we're a leader in MWBE inclusion, and the formation of our resource acquisition unit ensures MWBE participation is considered across the board. As a member of Governor Cuomo's MWBE Advisory Council, I have attended 2 meetings thus far to discuss building capacity and cultivating growth. We have another meeting scheduled prior to the 16th of January. So again, very important initiative. Similarly, the governor is seeking to support our veterans. Again, we provide SDVOB companies real opportunities to compete, and we require all contractors, consultants, and providers to use SDVOB firms on their projects. Among the governor's proposals is a law to implement new disclosure requirements for businesses that advertise their fee-based services for filing claims and appeals for VA benefits and enabling prosecution of businesses that violate those standards. Governor Cuomo also continues to expand educational opportunity for all. The governor is enacting sweeping protections against predatory borrowing practices and ensuring colleges provide students with accurate information annually about loans incurred. This builds upon the creation of the Excelsior Scholarship to further fight against student loan debt, and presents perhaps the greatest impact on our work should there be sizable increase in incoming students. He is also working to build a 21st century infrastructure in New York by investing in new mass transit, airports, roads, and bridges. This follows the beginning of construction on the new Grand Moynihan Train Hall, which is transforming the Long Island Railroad, for which DASNY provides permitting services. DASNY provided the same services for the new Jacob Javits Convention Center, which is also under construction. Creating a world-class sports and entertainment destination with a transformational $1 billion redevelopment of Belmont Park into an internationally recognized mixed-use destination for sports, entertainment, retail, and hospitality. He is also expanding access to open space in the state with completion of the Hudson River Park. On the opposite end of the state, DASNY and New York State Parks work at Niagara Falls State Park's Cave of the Winds State Park, the centerpiece of Governor Cuomo's $70 million revitalization project. The governor also launched a comprehensive plan to attack homelessness, increasing mental health and substance abuse disorder services for individuals experiencing homelessness. DASNY collaborated with the Office of Mental Health on the construction of the South Beach and Bronx Psychiatric Centers, among other projects, as well as the homes and community renewal on numerous supportive housing developments across New York State. His wellness agenda also extends to promoting cleaner, greener, and healthier New York. DASNY is a frequent collaborator with the State Department of Environmental Conservation and provided more than $380 million in energy efficiency upgrades across the City University of New York system. The governor is also developing a comprehensive program to adapt to and prepare for extreme weather associated with climate change. DASNY, as you know, collaborates with the governor's Office of Storm Recovery on dozens of projects valued at more than $100 million as part of the New York Rising Community Reconstruction Program. The governor's executive budget will be released no later than January 16th, and I will provide the board with an update at the February meeting. Now, as it relates to 2017 DASNY retirees, last year 26 employees retired from DASNY. I've attached a resolution expressing the gratitude of the board for the retirees' dedicated service and valuable contributions to DASNY and New York State. These retirees are representatives of the commitment of every member of the DASNY team to financing and building the institutions that provide the foundation for New York's communities. They have contributed decades of experience and expertise to DASNY and will be missed by the DASNY family. We have, of course, implemented knowledge transfer initiatives to ensure that our people have the skills and experience to continue to provide experience our clients need. Please consider this resolution at this point.
The resolution is on the table in front of you. It's brief, but it does list the names of all the retirees from 2017. I'm sure you've had a chance to take a look at it. Are there any questions about it? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve? John, thank you very much. John Malatuda, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Sandra, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Members of DASNY's International Union and its local 2110 UAW bargaining unit, which represents 26 employees, have approved their new collective bargaining agreement. Mike Corrigan will now walk you through the contract before you vote on it.
Thank you, George. Yesterday, they ratified the agreement and has the identical major terms of the CSEA agreement you folks acted on last month. 5% raises over the 5-year term, or 2% raises over the 5-year term, as well as phased-in increases to the employee share of health insurance. Really, there's not a lot to talk about other than those two major terms. Like George said, this is a small unit. It's a legacy of the merger with
You said they did ratify.
They did ratify it yesterday.
What do they do, the UAW piece?
It is it's a statutory legacy of, I believe, statutory.
Yeah, when DASNY merged with FDC and MICFA in 1995, we, through statute, inherited a small UAW collective bargaining. There are currently 26, and we usually, we do the CSEA contract, and then we usually agree to some terms, and we did that in this year.
Questions from Mike or Debbie? The resolution is in your booklet behind tab 4, immediately behind the resolution, the memorandum that describes the essential changes in the agreement. It's a brief resolution. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please do now. If you have, then has everybody seen it? Everybody read it? Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to approve?
So moved.
Sandra, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you very much, John. Gardner. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I will now turn our attention to DASNY's proposed budget for fiscal year 2019. As Kim laid out, we'll show you in a moment, this budget projects improved operating results relative to the projected 2017-2018 results, while continuing to implement our knowledge transfer initiatives. It also reflects continued expenditures to update our technology and to improve efficiencies and streamline operations. I now turn things over to Kim, who will present to you the proposed 2018-2019 operating budget.
Thank you, George. Before we go into the details for the 2018-19 operating budget, I would first like to update you on the projected financial position for the current fiscal year. As you recall, we discussed that last month. We had an improved year-end projection. We have returned now to what we originally had as part of the budget you approved last March, which is about a $500,000 deficit. The reason for the change since December is about a $6 million reduction. We have revisited how we are allocating DASNY's liability for its post-retirement benefits other than pensions. As you'll recall, we allocate a portion of that to the state that aligns with the amount of support that we provide to the state. Historically, we have done that on a year-by-year basis. So whatever level of support we provide in that fiscal year is how we've allocated the entire liability. We have changed that approach such that it will now be cumulative since the inception of the liability in 2008. That is a better alignment, we feel, with the overall level of support. Since the liability is cumulative, we feel that the level of support we provide to the state should also be calculated on a cumulative basis. So that essentially returns us back to the financial position that we originally projected with the current year fiscal budget. Now, moving on to the 2018 to 19 operating budget. You see in both the memo that I prepared as well as the package you received that the operating expenditures are approximately $115 million. That's a 1.99% increase over the projected expenditures for the current fiscal year. It's important to note, as we have done in the past, we have prepared the budget without insight into the SAFE budget. We have therefore assumed a continuation of the level of support that we have historically provided to the state. Once we receive the budget and we're able to review it, we can update you at next month's meeting if there are any impacts to the budget. Now, if you look at some of the primary drivers, again, as you'll see in the memo, and that's also shown on page 6 of the presentation, some more details behind the changes. But overall, the change from the current fiscal year to the proposed plan is related to salaries and benefits. The salary component is projected to increase by $1.8 million. That reflects contractual obligations related to cost of living, staff and longevity increases. It also includes the addition of 12 FTEs, and that is all partially offset by using some of the evolution and healthcare transformation reserve funds to fund a portion of the new FTEs, and that's because they will be facilitating knowledge transfer with some of the retiring employees. As Gerard had noted, that's an important part of our strategy as we continue to see more and more of our employees retiring. On the benefit side, the proposed increase is approximately $1 million. This reflects a 6% increase in health insurance premiums. That's due to both higher rates as well as higher participation, and higher contributions to retirements. That's based on the estimate we received from the employee retirement system, as well as an increase to reflect higher salaries. A few of the underlying assumptions before we move on to the proposed financial results would be, on page 6, you see the budgeted FTEs. We're projecting, as I noted, an increase of 12 FTEs. That would bring the budgeted level to 529. This does reflect the 13 new positions that we added in the grants administration department during the current fiscal year, none of which were budgeted this year. In terms of our lines of business, on the financing side, the budget reflects 3 additional private financings, and the construction workload in 2017 as we end the current year, we are looking at a 33% increase over the prior year while maintaining a steady number of projects in excess of 900. When you look at pages 4 and 5 of the presentation, see that when you take all of these assumptions into account of the proposed operating budget, we would expect to be in a break-even position, so a slight improvement over the current year's projected deficit.
What are the new field sites? What is that? Is that
where we have ongoing construction?
with construction?
Yes.
Okay.
Kim, I have a question.
on page 6. It's the last bullet point under employee medical benefits. Current employees pay 29% and 16% for family and individual coverages, respectively, I understood. And retirees pay 25 and 10% of the same two, respectively, but could use any accrued sick leave to cover their contributions. That is, DASNY could pay up to 100% of the employees. How do you help me to understand? It's my ignorance here to understand how we value. How is sick leave valued?
The civil service that we get the health insurance through does evaluation at the point you retire.
I see.
And then they tell you how much it will contribute towards your health insurance for a period of time.
Okay.
It's a kind of complicated formula that we've been using for a long time that we wouldn't have any control over.
I see.
But it's the same for everybody.
It's different.
Can you elect to be paid instead? Can you collect your sick leave?
No. You can collect your unused vacation up to a level, just as you could if you left, even not retiring, but you have no entitlement to sick leave.
I'm sorry, it's my ignorance. I don't know these things.
No reason you would.
What portion of the 6% is participation, and what portion is premium increases?
I don't have the exact breakdown on that. I'd say it's probably more on the participation, especially as we see additional retirees, because the percentages that Al just noted are the maximum that the employee would pay. And so to the extent that they have higher levels of accrued sick time that get applied to their premiums, we pay that out of DASNY's funds, so that percent becomes all higher in terms of DASNY share.
So it might be 2 or 3% is premium, and the rest is. I mean,
it could be. I will get back to you with a better breakdown. But the plans that are the most popular plans are increasing. The Empire plan is increasing by over 7%, and the CPHP is 2%. And then we have the retirement a little bit as well.
We interrupted you, Ken. We interrupted you. Were you?
I was fine. Only just questions.
Okay. Are there other questions, Ken?
The 13 new positions in the grant administration that were unanticipated. What is that related to? Just an increase in workflow, or?
Yes, we had a significant increase in the overall volume. That was particularly related to the SAM grants. There was a very high backlog and continuing increase in the volume of grants that are approved and need to be processed through that department.
Over the past 20 years, there's been a fluctuation in the staffing in that unit, as well as the volume they've been dealing with. And most recently, I think they got down to about 6 employees, and then we had an extremely high, 1,000 SAM grants arrive in a fairly short period of time. So we had to staff up to deal with that.
So what's the overall staffing in that dedicated to the grants administration?
I think it's anticipated to be about 22.
And the other 12 new positions, it's not clear to me from the wording, that's replacing people who retired? In which case it wouldn't be a net increase.
We don't have specific insight into who will retire. We know who is eligible to retire, and so we have to start planning for those individuals. Very often, people don't file their paperwork until sometimes even a couple weeks before they're going to retire, typically maybe a month or so beforehand. But knowing where people are in age and years of service, we make estimates as to who may retire.
But I'm not clear on why you need to increase the number of positions, because if someone requires they vacate a position.
We don't actually budget for the retirement until the person comes in. So the proposed would be the new people coming in, but not assuming that all of those people that can retire
will retire when we do the budget and salaries.
This was part of what we talked about last year around this time, probably earlier than this time, succession planning, that recognizing that we had a window of a large number of folks with very important skills that were on the cusp of retiring within a 2 to 3 year period, but we needed to have a transfer of knowledge, and so we built that into the budget.
I think, well, often done with existing staff, not necessarily with adding new people to.
Right. Mechanically, I think what is there are more positions than are funded within there. If you go through the total list of positions, and then the number that Kim is quoting is the approximate number of full-time equivalents. And so the 12 is, there is money for approximately 12 more full-time equivalents to apply in areas where we will need to have essentially 2 people occupying the same position during that knowledge transfer. And that's, I think, what
right. And although the FTE count that I stated, the 529, doesn't take that ultimate reduction, and we do assume a certain amount of it to be funded through the reserves when we do the budgeted salaries.
Okay.
So the number, the 12 number, is a solid number or an estimated number? Do we know for sure that we're going to have 12 new FTEs? Is that the... Okay,
No, it's
all
an,
right.
It's an estimate.
It's a budget.
Got
It's
it.
an authorization to
It's an
fill.
authorization of funding that is equal to 12 full-time equivalents.
Other questions for Ken?
The notation about the projected construction workload increasing 33% while maintaining a steady number of projects, I wasn't quite sure what that meant exactly. Can you?
So in terms of dollar value, the dollar value of our construction workload has increased over the prior fiscal year, but it's the number of projects has remained more steady. It has not increased by 33%, so it becomes just a volatility in the size of the individual projects. So,
Same number of projects, larger dollar value.
Right. So in this particular fiscal year, we had an average higher dollar project value.
That's a significant increase. Is that a regular? I mean, is that within the realm of an annual fluctuation that one sees, or?
Well, this is a big jump. We're actually, and I've been reporting each month, and I'll report again today. Today's report is we're about 140 million ahead of last year's expenditures. That's a pretty significant jump. So it's a good thing. But at the same time, I think if you're asking me, is that typical? I would say no. That kind of jump is not typical. We saw it on the way down, some steep drops, but frankly, I did not anticipate this big of a jump in this fiscal year.
And based not on a few big projects, but lots and lots.
I think there's what I look back on in this current period is I look back at a couple of things. I look back at the CUNY energy performance projects. There's a large number of those, and those projects are in the area of 15 to 30 million. We've got about 30 or 40 of those clicking and actually starting to close out. So although those projects were on the books a couple of years ago, the spend is now really increasing at a higher rate because we're coming to the end of some of those projects. And in addition to that, the SUNY numbers for this past summer were higher than typical as far as rehab projects. So I think those two things contributed greatly to the uptick. But it is quite a large uptick. I don't anticipate we're going to get to 882, frankly. But I think we'll be up around 810, 820, something like that. I just ran some quick math backwards, looking at the 140 over 9 months and what that extrapolates out to over 12 months. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? I think we go back to the president's instructions. Thank you.
In our construction division, we head into 2018 continuing to build upon our successes in 2017. This year, we highlighted the wide breadth of our services with projects like the $16 million conversion of Bishop Hall at Buffalo State College, the deployment of design build for the new $21 million residence hall at SUNY Brockport, and $380 million worth of energy efficiency work at CUNY's campuses. We are poised to end the calendar year with a pipeline of 927 projects valued at nearly $6.5 billion. Steve will now provide you with an update on the construction division's work.
Thank you. We're behind tab 7 are the 3 construction division reports. Starting with the construction projects report for November 2017. On the cover is highlighted a project for the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. This is a Letchworth State Park project, nature trail rehabilitation. The scope was to rehabilitate and reconstruct deteriorated sections of the stone trail, masonry stairs, pylons, railings, perform rock slope scaling, rock nailing, shotcrete, and drainage repairs, while maintaining the rugged features and historic nature of the landscape. The budget was $1.4 million. We started design in June of 2015. We finished design in February of 2016. Bergman Associates was our designer. Construction started in March of this past year. We finished in November. And the GC was Edward Huon out of Central New York. The CM for us on the project was Lira. Some of the challenges were, if you see the pictures there, the challenges were really just getting the materials to the project site. The site is quite remote, and it was challenging. The materials included several tons of stone, trail stone bedding, capstones weighing between 300 and 400 pounds each, stone masonry mortar mix, the stonework itself, and nearly 30 cubic yards of concrete for the new staircase foundations. Shoring up the rock face of the trail was also a challenge. There's a picture of that going on. That included the installation of 20-foot horizontal rock anchors encased in shotcrete and a grid acting to stabilize and cover over the rock slope. So these are fun projects. You don't get to do these that often, but this one was certainly enjoyable. It's quite a park out there. On page 7, just spoke about the construction expenditures. Prior year to date, $450 million. Current fiscal year to date, $588. The delta is $138 million to the plus. And just quickly, a couple of project and program updates. I'll start with NYCHA. The $100 million program broken into security, appliances, and quality of life. On the security side, we're up to 37 projects now completed, 16 in construction, 14 lighting projects advancing through final design. On the appliance side, 25 developments have been completed with deliveries. There's 2 developments today currently in the delivery phase. And on the quality of life side, there's 23 projects in the construction documents phase of design, and 2 projects have advanced to construction. South Beach Psych Center, our largest construction project today, Staten Island. We are now deep into building package number 5. This is the overall general completion package, which includes MEP and all general construction work. The exterior light gauge framing is progressing under BP5, as well as fireproofing of steel members. We're beginning some MEP work. There was a utility issue that was discovered by our contractor related to infrastructure exiting the CSD building on piles and entering our building unsupported with 10 feet of soil material above. We've excavated out that material. We're backfilling with a styrofoam type material in its place so that the utilities and infrastructure do not collapse under the weight of the backfilled soil. The slab on grade in that area is a structural slab, meaning it's not supported on grade, it's supported off of the foundation walls and grade beams. So the fact that we're going with a styrofoam material rather than traditional subsurface material is insignificant. On the Court Officers Training Academy, commissioning and finish work continues toward what is now a February 18 TAO. We continue to meet bi-weekly with the general contractor. We're planning for the fire alarm pretest, which is always a good sign of completion, as well as other testing and inspection for the TAO. As I said, current schedule is pointing to February of 18. We finished the SUNY Alfred project in time for the spring semester occupancy by the kids. We received the TAO on January 4th from our code group for phase 1 of the Mackenzie Hall Gut Rehab project. We're now moving into phase 2 with a bid date for phase 2 construction at the end of January. On the Brockport project, the design build project remains on schedule for summer of 18 completion, despite the brutal winter weather impacting roof and facade material installation. Interior work continues, MEP roughen and gypsum wall board installation is progressing. And at SUNY Albany, we have a $26.5 million gut rehab for the G&H buildings. The project bid date is late January of 18, coming up. Project anticipated completion date is July of 19. So this is going to be a very challenging project. We're talking about spending $26.5 million. And we have to wait for the kids to leave, so from May to July of 2019. So this will be quite the challenging SUNY project.
What was that building?
It's the G&H buildings. That's the names of 2 dorms that also have some program space associated with them. Moynihan Station, one of 2 of our permit-only projects down in New York. We provided preliminary comments to the design team for the basis of the design report we received on December 8th. 100% document submission is expected in mid-February with construction of this phase 3 annex and upper Farley building areas starting in July of 2018. Phase 2 continues on the train hall. We're using a consultant from Tectonic to do a lot of our field work out there for us today. Our code guys are down there regularly. In fact, our code division leader is down there today, keeping an eye on things. At the Javits Center, the other permitting only projects on the expansion piece, the deep foundation work continues, including caisson and grade beam and infrastructure installation today. Supportive excavation work is ongoing. Demolition of the north exhibit building continues with removal of slabs and foundations ongoing. New York City DOB has issued permits for the interior egress work from the existing Javits Center. So New York City DOB permitted that piece. They just permitted the work that needs to happen on the existing Javits Center structure to tie into the new piece, which we're permitting. So, and the superstructure package, everything above grade, we received on January 2nd for permit review. We've assigned reviewers to begin that work. 60% docs are anticipated at the end of this month. We don't have to review that package. We'll review the 100% documents, but they are being provided to us as a courtesy. Just a couple of operational updates. Construction division staff are making presentations as follows. I'll be in New York on the 25th addressing the CMAA New York, New Jersey group. And I think my topic is project delivery methods and DASNY pipeline. Until I haven't put it together yet. SUNY PPAA is on the 30th. I have to present to that group as well. And Jody Smith-Anderson is going to present to the ACEC, it's the engineers of New York State, on the 29th. So a couple of presentations are coming. We're getting ready for the performance evaluation process. We've got over 300 evaluations in the construction division knocked back. That's just kicking off. We have 3 training sessions coming up in the next week. We have performance evaluation training on the 12th, construction division technology and dashboard session on the 12th, and we're updating our general conditions Moral Altotina will be delivering that to the construction division on the 19th. And lastly, just a lot of activity around DY and the committee recommendations within the construction division ongoing. That concludes my report.
You have been busy. You've been very busy. Questions for Steve?
So you mentioned your work for NYCHA, and as anyone with a pulse knows, NYCHA's been getting the Jesus kicked out of it the last month or so. First it was lead, and now it's heat and hot water, and there are all sorts of other issues. My sense is that what NYCHA is being hit for is not things that we're really involved in. It's the lead, it's the mechanical systems, heat and hot water, but not really things that you and your team are involved in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, our $100 million was pointed at those three programs. Security. So anytime you're putting in CCTV down there, I think it's a benefit. The added appliances and the quality of life type projects, which, a lot of that is playgrounds, basketball courts, and community centers where we're doing a little bit of rehab here or there. So we've
And it had nothing to do with the roofs, or it had nothing to do with the boilers or anything else. It was a very dedicated
Our scopes
line
were
for-
really three
right.
distinct scopes of work.
Mostly security, right? Did I remember that? It was mostly security?
About 50 million was in security, another 10 to 15 in appliances, and the balance is the quality of life.
All right. And it wasn't necessary, Steve, to relocate tenants there, is that or was it?
Yeah, we really didn't go into the tenant space with our work, other than in the appliance delivery, where we literally pulled a refrigerator out and plugged it up. That was all scheduled through.
I thought I remember that allocation was the result of some, security issues and no cameras in places, and that's why they allocated the money, and that's when they got DASNY. And then they tried to switch you to force do some roof work too.
No, the money is pointed to, it came to us pointed to specific projects. In other words, development A was to get $1 million in security cameras. That's what we went.
Thank you, Steve. If there are no further questions for Steve, we have the General Counsel's report.
Thank you. I don't have anything significant to report, but at tab 8 of the board book is the 2018 calendar for board review and action. As has become the tradition, we provide this list so that the board can see when the statutory and various oversight obligations will be observed in the coming year. One comment: the March agenda traditionally is heavy. There's a lot of things to review, and April can get a little busy as well. Separate from this list, we'll also do the annual meetings for the 2 subsidiaries, and we'll place them in where they seem to fit the best from a calendar standpoint. But definitely, if you're looking ahead, leave some time in March in case we'll have to do multiple committee meetings and then board action. Thank you. That concludes my report.
I'll point out that the March activity includes the board self-evaluation, annual board self-evaluation, which is distributed in March, or is that what we got?
Distributed ahead of time.
In January.
This
Distributed, yes.
Okay. And are there, as has been the case in the past, Debbie, are we making changes in the questionnaire in order to reflect accurately what DASNY does?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was going to, after this meeting, discuss with the governance committee chair whether we were going to send out exactly what we've done before, or whether.
Outstanding.
But it should go out.
And thank you, John. Thank you. John, thank you for that. That was our last agenda item. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn? Gerard, thank you very much. Is there a second? Adrian, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. If none opposed, we stand adjourned. So, okay.